Is my microphone on? Okay. Just want to make a brief announcement here. We will be starting the meeting at 9:12. We'll be starting the meeting at 9:12, so if you are watching per the go-to meeting, we'll be starting the meeting at 9:12 this morning. Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting for the City of Roswell. I will call the meeting to order here at 9:12 a.m. And we let the minutes reflect that we do have a full quorum. All councilors are present. Who's taking minutes this morning?
I am.
Oh, you're taking minutes, okay. So just let the minutes reflect that all committee members are present at this time. Could I get a approval of the agenda, please?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the agenda, the amended version as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the May 7th meeting.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the minutes from the May 7th, 2000 meeting of the Roswell Finance Committee.
We have a
I'll
motion
second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the April 7, 2020 meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Informational reports that we have here. What do we have coming to us?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. In your packet, you have your normal, our normal reports, but I did include our third quarter DFA report, which is a report like this. So this gives you what we reported to DFA for third quarter. I also included our investments reports that I gave you today as well. So we'll start going over with the gross receipts tax. So for May 2020, we collected almost 2.9 million. That was actual collected. We did budget a little over 3 million for the month of May, so we were a little short, 130,790 is what we were short versus budget. To date, we have collected 3.6 million over budget. That's about 11.33% increase with 11 months collected. So we're still waiting to see our gross receipts this month that we will be reporting for April. Any questions?
Any questions from committee? No.
Our next report is our largest tax report. We did collect 68,000. This slide may look a little different because our actual collection was 68,000. We had almost 14,000 in pending collections. But we're showing the report as all rooms rented at 17,664. So we budgeted 95,970 for the month, and so we're down about 13,807 with 10 months collected. When you look at the graph, your FY 2020 shows a decline, and that is because we were expecting payments that were coming in late due to COVID-19.
And have we received those payments yet?
Yes.
Okay, so everything's
We're getting back to order.
okay. Thank you.
So our convention center fee as well, we collected 36,953. We had 7,200 in pending collections. Our budget for the month is 55,000, and for the month of April, we were down about 10,917. That was with 10 months collected. Again, on the graph, you'll see the decline in the collected amount because of the pending collections at 7,000.
And where are we at on the pendings?
They go hand in hand. So once we receive lodgers, we receive the convention center fee. Our investment portfolio, I thought I'd give you a little deeper look into our investments for May 2020. So right now for our Pioneer Bank, this is our city operating account. We have a little over $5 million in the account. Morton Capital Markets is who invests for us. Right now, we have a beginning value with them at $35,645,000. Ending was $35,799,000, with interest and dividends reported at $40,438. We do have a little over $1.5 million with our LGP. That's our local government investment pool, and our earnings reinvested for this month were $1,571. So this is our our bigger accounts. We do have smaller accounts. And so your report will actually show a little bit different in the ending balances. I just wanted to highlight our bigger reports.
All right, do we have any questions? Comments? Okay.
So I have Chanel Ray here to give you guys a Tyler update. She will go through some slides with you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Committee. Today I'm going to be talking to you about Tyler, more specifically finances. That is what we went live with in July of last year. So that's the only module we've actually gone live with. Everything else is still in the works. So financials we went live with on July 1st of 2019. It included budgeting, purchasing, accounts payable, and general ledger. That's not all inclusive, there's a lot within that. We went live with purchase cards in December of 2019 and then cashiering in January of this year. So Tyler has allowed us to operate a more user-friendly system. I don't know if any of you are familiar with what we were using before, but it was really difficult to get reportings out, to research information. So Tyler has allowed us to streamline that process. We're more efficient. We have more up-to-date information, whereas before in our previous system, there was some kind of update that would have to be run in the system, but now we're working with real-time numbers. Everything is always up to date. As soon as we do something, it hits the system. We have one stop for approvals, so when you log in, you have all of your approvals right there at your hub. It's really great. You don't have to go digging in the system to find anything. All of your approvals are there together, which speeds the process up. And this has also allowed us to revamp outdated codes we were using or forms. So we've had a chance to redo all of our forms, purchase orders, our checks, even our receipts. Everything is up to date with our branding now. So this is just a little demonstration I put together for the budget. So we'll kind of go through that and I'll talk through it. So budgeting now, as once we create the projection and budget, you go in, the user will go into their account, they click on add detail, and they will select the type it is, they put their amount, and the description. Before, when we were using our previous system, they were actually turning in Excel spreadsheets to budget, and then we were using those spreadsheets to put in another spreadsheet to create a budget. So now it's all within here. If we need to Excel it out to, if we need to put it into Excel, we can get it out to get those numbers or to use Excel as a tool. Now, we have asked everyone to use lots of descriptions. We get to have those descriptions all year long. So instead of us going back and researching the book, we have them at our fingertips. We have this information. Again, it makes the process easier. So when we create a projection, we can also pull in the previous year's numbers. So there's lots of ways for us to use the tool for budgeting. We can tell it to use the previous current original budget. We can tell it to increase that budget, decrease that budget. So it pulls in numbers. We already have a budget made technically. It's really great. So this is a lot easier and a lot quicker to use this to budget. It's easier for the departments, it's easier for budget. It allows us to get numbers to you all quicker. So again, this is where we, later on in the year, if we have to research something, we can go in and see what the original budget was, what the description was. So we do have those notes later on. Allowing us to research items and not have to go back to the paper books. Now, workflows are great. It's really allowed us to streamline processes. Before, we were using paper everything almost. If someone needed to do a purchase requisition, they would fill out a paper form, and they would have to take it from person to get it signed, and then eventually to purchasing to get it converted into a purchase order. Now the system does that for us. We, with these processes, are almost completely paperless, so they are able to, well, the workflows, we can track at all times where it's at. So currently, this is waiting for either Monica or I to approve, and once we approve it, then it goes on to purchasing. And so at each step, there's different users, and so you can always see if something is being held up, where it's at. We can put comments in there. If we're holding something up for a reason, we can let them know, hey, we're holding this up. If we reject something, we put lots of notes. This is why we're rejecting this. So this has really been a great tool because it's all in the system. It allows us not to lose things with paper. Now, Tyler Content Manager is really great. It allows us to attach things everywhere. So we can, this is a quote for the requisition we just looked at, so they attach this in the requisition. So we can attach any time something goes before council, we can attach the backup documents. So everything is in order for us to have the tools to convert something in a quicker manner. And Tyler Content Manager, it also allows, invoices, once we receive invoices to pay, it helps us with that process as well. So for financials, just kind of going over each area, the purchasing, the paperless transactions, it has led us to be more efficient. Again, we're not losing things with paper. It allows for better tracking. Accounts payable, we're getting real-time notifications, so anytime someone attaches an invoice and says this is okay to pay, we get a notification that it's okay to pay, and we go through that process. And that is allowing us to stay more current with our payments to vendors. Cashiering, I spoke with you a little maybe at the beginning of the year on that when we first went live. Again, we were able to update our receipts. They look better. It has our branding now. Accounting and general ledger, a lot of the processes are the same, but the system allows them to be easier. They're not necessarily a different process. It's just more efficient. Currently, we're working on going live with payroll and utility billing. Those are massive journals that we have to put into the system so that our general ledger is always up to date. Tyler actually allows us to import those journals, so instead of entering a 1,000-line journal, at the click of a button, it's in and mess-free. So instead of doing hours of work, it's maybe 10 minutes. The budgeting process, again, is so much smoother in Tyler, and we have real-time numbers for users. I actually was able to watch the workshop online, and I know you all commented that this was the earliest we've had numbers, and I really think Tyler has allowed us to do that. So I'm really excited about that. Still to come on financials, we have bids and contracts and inventory. Those schedules are to be determined. We haven't worked anything out with them yet, but they are modules that are going to be in the works. Cashiering, we just did central cashiering, so we will still have to train each department how to use the system on cashiering, which shouldn't be too much. And capital assets, we should be going live within the month of June. I don't have an exact date. It's just right now we're doing data review, and then we'll be able to start using capital assets in Munis. Moving on to human capital management, we are scheduled to go live with payroll and HR July 1st. Recruiting and risk management will be towards the end of August, and advanced scheduling will be towards the end of November tentatively. Advanced scheduling is something that we will be able to use for fire and police to help with their schedules. They're a little more complicated. Intergov, we have permits, planning, and licenses all going live at the end of June. 311 is going to be a really great tool. It's a fix-it form online, so the community can go on and say, hey, my neighbor's weeds are 10 feet tall, so they can report that online to us. And the customer self-service, that will allow people to go online and do the permitting process online, and hopefully streamline that as well. Utility billing, we have some training scheduled towards the end of the month. We are going to start working on parallel billings. So just to make sure we have all of our rates set up correctly, conversion passes, and we'll also be getting training on using the utility billing system. And at this time, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions or comments from committee? Councilor Roebuck.
Just a technical question. Is the data stored locally, or is it stored on cloud, or both?
Yes, it is. We're SaaS hosted, which means it's elsewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's really exciting. This program really is exciting. I know I spoke with several counselors after the workshop on the budget, and just the ability of how everything, and I appreciate staff and management and that as well, of just getting the organization, but I think that this program has made things so much easier to report that out. So I appreciate the work you're investing into this as well, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. All right.
Thank you, Chanel.
So now we have the FY 2021 budget discussion at this time. Who's going to be?
So Mr. Nebb will come up and talk a little bit about our budget.
Good morning. I actually did not provide any presentation for today because the whole intent was from Tuesday night presenting the entire preliminary budget. It's really now your turn. We're here to answer any questions that you have regarding the budget. And I have Juan Fuentes, Stephen Martinez in the room as well too, in order to help answer any of those questions, all the way from our philosophy and our planning, all the way through the numbers down to the departmental level. So I stand for questions.
All right. We'll start and see what counselors may have some questions. Do you have any questions or comments? Councilor Roebuck.
Thank you, Chair. Something that, as I was working on some stuff last night, and maybe I thought of this morning when I was taking a shower, I don't remember exactly when, but I think a bit of information that would be helpful. Well, first of all, I'm extremely pleased with, obviously the Tyler plays into that, and the presentation of the budget this year has just been, we're moving in the right direction. I hope we continue to move in that direction. One thing that struck me sometime in the last 12 hours was, we've got the budget breakdowns. I don't have mine here, unfortunately, but we have the budget breakdowns. It would be nice in the future to have the income breakdowns for each department. Certainly. As well. But even for this year at a bigger level, it would be nice if we had, and this is not necessarily related directly to the budget, but part of the informational process. It would be nice if we had the ability to say, this is where your tax dollars are going, because we have our budget, but the fire department might get a grant for a fire engine, and that, so all those numbers, if we're just looking at the actual budgets themselves, I don't get an accurate thing, because really, the city council doesn't have any direct say in how a grant is used. That's an outside entity that's allocating that money however they see fit. So there's obviously road grants, that things, but what we do have direct responsibility for is how are we spending those tax dollars, especially the GRT, how we're spending those, and it would be nice to see that laid out and like, okay, this is how we've spent the tax dollars, irregardless of what the budget levels look like, because budget levels are dramatically affected by grants, project loans, et cetera. And so I think that would just be another useful information as we are communicating with our constituents to say, hey, this year we are planning on taking this many millions of dollars from you, and of the millions of dollars we're taking from you, this is how we're spending your money versus this is how we're spending the money that we got from a grant or whatever. So But other than that, like I said on Tuesday, I'm really pleased with the budgeting process, and the dramatic improvements that we've made over the past couple of years, and not a moment too soon based on our current challenges that we're facing.
Yeah, and I believe that we can add these pieces into the final budget, because again, the process that we utilize, and that this might be helpful for everybody, including the public, is that we're at a preliminary budget stage. And so our final budget gets approved by the end of July. So there will be some adjustments for reconciled numbers. There will be some adjustments within that whole system all the way through there. These two items, Counselor, that you had shared that we'd like to do that, we can add those into that final budget document when we do all the cleanup and we do all the preparation, because I believe this is very good information for the public to see as well too. The whole challenge with this budget is that we believe that the funding that we rely heavily upon, the GRT, the gross receipts tax, will collapse because of the COVID-19 and, of course, the downturn in the oil and gas. We just don't know what that level is, and I think it is revenue in and it's expenses out, essentially. So we are budgeting to the amount of money that we have available to spend on all of the services. The challenge always becomes how to divvy up the expenses with the revenue. And so I think that information for the tax dollars as to where does their money go will be very important to help the public understand that this is how much money is there. And I think that'll be a good thing. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions, comments? None? Okay. Do you know when, Mr. Neighbor, when we first decided that this would be the big topic to discuss in the Finance Committee meeting, I think that I really was looking at the many years past on the council of the workshops being 3-4 hours long, and there being so many questions, so many concerns, so many changes that were desired to be made and brought through, and you ended up with so many pieces from the cookie cutters that we had to come back in Finance Committee and try to bring that back together and make it work. But I think that this council has come together to a degree of, at least what it seems like so far, in unification of recognizing that this has been put together well. So I'm amazed that we're coming together today, and this is not really as lengthy of a discussion as it could have had to be.
And Councilor Perry, Mr. Chair, one thing that we should lay out there is that final slide that we shared on Tuesday night as well too, as to what are the next steps with this. And I think that's important to understand, because you have the preliminary budget in your hands for the next month, and so we have one more Finance Committee meeting. So as city councilors look at what they would like to amend in that budget, as the public as your constituents talk to you, and as it trickles through the system, you'll have that opportunity to develop out the amendments to this budget at the next Finance Committee meeting. And so that's another 30 days out to really look through this thing. We'll have another 30 days of history, knowing exactly how the economy is being affected by all of this. So all of that information will become paramount in making a decision. The council will be able to act upon any amendments that are presented through the Finance Committee by the regular City Council meeting in July, and then we will come back for a special session at the end of July with the reconciled numbers, and we'll finalize the budget essentially at the end of July. So there's a lot of opportunities. So as you peruse the information, I think staff worked very hard, and we appreciate all the assistance of the City Council over the last 3 years of getting our computer system up to where we can actually move the numbers. Our conversations now with the City Council are so much more directed toward moving the city forward than just trying to react to where we're at that given point in the time. So anytime that you need any of our help, just please let us know.
If I could just mention to the councilors on committee, and also we have Councilor Stubbs and Councilor Foster joining us this morning. I don't know if anyone else joined us, but for all of us on council, I said it at the workshop, but I want to say it one more time. We do have another month before we come back to the Finance Committee. during this month, I want to really encourage counselors to really take a good look at this. Go to staff, ask the questions that are necessary for you to feel comfortable with what has been presented. I've been in several meetings already and worked through and a lot of things. But if you have some concerns, if there's an area where you're saying, in years past, I think that we've sort of had a kind of system where if a counselor says, well, I'd like to see 100,000 go towards this project, or I'd like, more playground equipment on this, let's give money towards this. And there's just been a consensus, and then, staff went in, made those changes, and then brought us back a budget, and we voted on it. I don't think we have that, I don't know what the real word is to use. I don't think we have that ability, I guess, to do that this year, because this year it's not a matter of just saying, well, I'd like more. For us to put more money in a pocket somewhere, it's going to have to come out of another pocket in a substantial way. So I'm going to ask that if anything comes to finance next month that says I would like to see more towards this, I need that counselor also to show me where they would like to bring that from, because that's going to be important, because it's going to be a robbing Peter to pay Paul type situation in a significant way. I think we have a good product right here for the city of Roswell. I think we have substantial cutbacks, but at the same time, we're not just being reactive to the situation. We're actually planning as well on putting away for that next time that something like this comes up. So I think that's critical that we keep that in mind and don't just try to go to the storehouse to make up the difference. So if we could just all keep that in mind for the next time, okay? Is there any other discussion on the budget itself? Counselor Stubbs, do you have any questions or comments you'd like to make? Counselor Foster, do you have anything? If you do, if you'd like, okay. Why don't, Monica, where's the microphone that Counselor Foster could use?
I can step out of the way.
Okay, that'd be fine. All right. I always try to afford our counselors that are here with us that aren't part of that they've come for a reason to give you an opportunity if you have a question or a comment.
Well, thank you. And my major concern, I love this budget. As I said Tuesday, I love the fact that we also have a plan. One of the amendments, and it's not really an amendment, it's just working on the plan because it's not going to change this year's budget. It's just, I want to give our museum and our zoo a little more step room to get to that 70% funding, and so it's not going to affect this year's budget at all. We're talking about next year's budget, so we're not going to be moving anything. But I would like for them, because as I suggested, the 70%, as of this year's funding, we're at 2% of the zoo, their cost recovery. And we're going to be asking the next year that they're jump 68% to 70. And so I just see that as a huge jump. For our museum, 18.8 to 70% is a huge jump. Is it doable? I think it is, but if you're just looking at that, when our golf course is at 63.3% and we're just asking them to go to 70, I'm like, you're asking them to step up on the curb where you're asking the other two to climb El Capitan. It's a whole big difference there. And so the logic to me is just to step it a little bit different, but it's still there. I want it to eventually to be at 70%. It'd be great if we could get it to 100%, but I know that's dreaming. But I think some of it can be, and I think we're also giving them ways of doing it too. And so in this year of transition, instead of having that 70 sitting over their head, I would like another, even 50%. Would be a little bit easier, so that's not hanging over their head. And so that's what I'll be proposing. So it won't be a change to the budget, this year's budget. It'll be changed to the philosophy of where we're getting to the next year's budget. And so that's what I'll be proposing for an amendment change.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Foster. Okay. All right. Anything from committee? Okay. Thank you so much. We appreciate your all's hard work. And And I guess I expected a whole lot today, and y'all have done a great job, and you get to sit back there and watch today. Thank you all. Thank you. Let's move on to action items, review and ranking of public affairs and information technology capital projects.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe that Juan Fuentes is going to present this for the committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. So I just want to set the table for this discussion item, and Juanita Jennings, Public Affairs, is here present, as well as Jeff Betchel. They'll be presenting their own projects. So we are in our second year of reviewing the and ranking of the capital projects. Last year, Joe presented a master list of all of the projects. So last year what we did, we divided up all of those projects among the different committees. In each of the departments that were assigned to those committees, they presented those projects, which then were ranked, then forwarded to the full city council, where they were ranked further for the ICIP, and that ICIP was developed to provide the top 5 for the legislative coming up in January. So what you have before you is the list of projects for the Public Affairs, Convention Center, and IT. Just want to kind of point out a couple of things on the spreadsheet in front of you. What you see on the far left is the FY20 ranking. That was last year's ranking. That is just for your information only, to kind of give you a sense of where this project, where it was ranked. As you can see on the second column there will be the FY21 ranking, which will be the new, so that we have a little bit of just kind of historical tracking of how these certain projects are moving. Some of the projects that are highlighted, as in this example at the top, are some projects that were already funded in this fiscal year. So just kind of give you an idea of what projects were done. And of course, you can see there in the following, the fourth column as the FY21-25 ICIP list. Some projects were included in the ICIP, while others were not. So with that, Mr. Chair, committee members, I will go ahead and pass it on. I don't know, I believe Juanita will be the first to come up.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. I put together just kind of a couple of slides to kind of go over the thought process for the ranking and kind of give you guys an idea of the vision of where our department would like to see some of these projects going. This was the Convention Center list, not in particular order of how you guys ranked them, but in order of our preferences. The biggest one is the courtyard fencing project. How we rank them internally is by generating additional revenue for this facility. The office renovation, and I do have some pictures to show you, is due to because we have this beautiful building on this side, we have a nice renovated side, and then when you walk into the office space, which I invite you all to do after the meeting, we have pieces of carpet that was torn out, we see the foundation, we have cracked walls, and then third would be the LED lighting and the pre-function as an opportunity. Again, when you walk out here, it's nice and bright on the left side. As you start walking over to the exhibit hall, you can drastically see how dark it is. And the same goes in the larger exhibit hall. On number 5, the AV edition, this would be to create an output. You might think, well, they spent $400,000 on AV, audio-visual equipment. That is correct. That was already in the process. What we found is that when a DJ comes in, they can't connect to the system because our technology is much higher quality and upgrade, so we need an output for them to plug into. The other, number 6, is the exterior signage and wayfinding. So we have this nice, beautiful building, and we have this old, what we tried to make a little bit more modern sign out here, and we have a vision for that that would also create a space for tourists or visitors. Ideally, our vision would be this R would be the structure illuminated for people to take a picture underneath with a larger billboard that would do our advertising for events, community attractions, and things like that. The kitchen equipment, most of our equipment in the kitchen has not been updated since 1997, which is the original purchase. We have been maintaining it and fixing it, but we have not had new kitchen equipment. One of our largest revenue opportunities in this facility is the food and beverage. That's our bread and butter, if you will. And so we would need to look at that if we want to continue to have, no pun intended, right? Exterior convention LED sign, that's part of this. I think they could be combined, other than the fact that we would like some type of wayfinding saying, hey, come turn here, this is the convention center, turn in here, this is the Roswell Museum and Art Center, instead of our kind of Band-Aid fix of what we have right now. Additionally, we will need to have an alcohol storeroom. Right now, we have a makeshift storeroom in order for us to have our license, but that is something, it works for now. But as we start to build more events and generate additional revenue from the alcohol sales, it is something to think about. And then the last thing, which would support minimizing our electric bill, would be a little bit more green effort, tinting our windows. We can still see out, but it will help. So I put together these visuals. I don't think you can see them as great, but y'all are here. You can kind of see in the first picture the lighting difference. That's a picture of our stove. The third picture is the office as you're walking into the office. That's our wayfinding sign. And then I have a vision for what the courtyard will look like. You can see on the picture number 3, those are cauldrons. They would have fire pits outside, and then we would have some green hedge. Or a less expensive option would be kind of that picnicky fence looking option. I know that what facility maintenance suggested was a cinder block. Again, they are the experts, but I think of this space as a revenue opportunity. Already in your packet, I'm sure you saw some lost revenue from graduation parties. I see it for weddings and other private functions that we can attract associations and things and have a really nice space. The last picture that I show you is a smoker. When you have large parties and large events here, and smoking meat is a much more efficient way to produce meat for 600 people rather than trying to cook steaks on that stove that has 4 burners. So that is why our executive chef have requested if we could purchase a smoker. So that's why I included that there. So that is Convention Center. For public affairs, which is mostly out of the Lodgers Tax Fund, the first thing that I would like to see at our visitor center is an LED sign, again, to attract people coming into our community. And the second thing is the expansion. So if you haven't had the opportunity, the visitor center is currently closed as far as the visitor center, but we have changed it into a retail store location. So our retail store side of the visitor center is now open for business, and I encourage you to take a look at it. We need additional space because there's greater opportunity when we have these visitors and community members come in. So we would like a more inviting storefront. We would like an entrance off of Main Street. We would like a dog park associated to the southern part of Pioneer or the northern part of Pioneer Plaza, because we do get a lot of RVs that come in that have animals. Number 5 would be the wayfinding and city infrastructure, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in this agenda today. Number 5 is a sports tourism office and DMO office. As we grow tourism and we grow the city, I think our next big strategy would be initiating a sports tourism platform, bringing in wrestling events, baseball tournaments, other things that we can utilize our recreation and aquatic center. We can utilize our Cielo Grande fields, our girls softball fields, and having a true operation for that. If for some reason we can't get 1 through 5 accomplished, we do have a second option, which would be visitor center improvements. So we do need some counter space and storage. That has actually worked out well in this move of City Hall and Finance. We now have storage in one location, so we're not spread out at the airport. We're not at Cahoon, at the Visitor Center and City Hall. We took up office space in City Hall, 2 office space, and now all of our stuff is in one location. I also would like to have a tourism trolley and a bus. One of our opportunities is to start selling group tours as a city. And then number 8 is community banner branding, which includes our banner program signage for fleet facilities so that it's all consistent in the brand. And then I know this one's a little bit crazy, but I would love to have a water feature. Roswell, we have a big aquifer, and I'd love to see more water and art within our community. And then I would like, when we build the brand new Welcome Center or Visitor Center, having an interactive experience for visitors rather than just our photo aliens. So I've put together some of what my visions could look like. You can see there's a bus and a trolley. I would take either one. This is the outside of the visitor center right now. You can tell it's not very inviting. Sometimes you don't know if it's open or if it's closed. And you can see how crowded it is as small as the building is. On the bigger picture, you can see how the wood is already starting to rot, even though this facility did have a renovation about a year and a half ago. It didn't get all the needed updates that it should have. And then the 2 other pictures are just kind of some visionaries of what I would hope to see as we move forward and continue to grow our city. And I will stand for any questions on this piece and then invite my colleague Jeff for his portion.
Let me make a comment before we take any questions or thoughts, and for folks especially that may be watching and they're seeing the city of Roswell make a $30-something million cut, and now we're talking about project. This is for placement within the ICIP. This is every child. When I was a kid, we got the Sears and Roebuck catalog out, before Christmas, and we
Yes.
started circling all the things that we wanted. And I usually got the same apple, and I'm kidding of it. But the ICIP is what we will send to Santa Fe. I don't think any of us are believing there's going to be a lot of significant money coming for ICIP projects, yet we still need to have a vision.
Absolutely.
We still need to have a forethought for moving towards the future. And so these, even though this seems like a pie-in-the-sky situation right now, it's still important to get these things taken care of. I want to get that out of the way. So is there any questions for Juanita at this time?
And may I add, all you're doing today is just ranking them. This was just a visual to kind of have you understand what our goals would be moving forward, but it's just to rank them on a list, not saying, hey, we're going to do this, although I would love that, but that's not what we're here for today.
Councilor Roebuck.
Yeah, first, a couple of procedural questions right now. I would rather not jump to another presentation if we could take these in bite-sized pieces before we go on to anybody else that we're ranking today. There are 2 reasons for a project to be on the ICIP. One is that we think that we can get the state potentially to give money to it, and the other reason is that some grants, et cetera, require listing on the ICIP in order to be applied for. Am I missing anything off of that list, Joe? I know Joe's texting. Did you catch what I just said? Oh, good. Am I missing anything off that?
No, and even where we're at with the budget, there's still projects that we will be doing. And so the whole ranking of the projects are to put together a list so that the city council can determine where the limited funding can go as well as where the ICIP is, so.
And I think that's something that I want to be clear, is that just because we rank something on here does not necessarily mean that we are planning on spending. This is not a budgeting process where we are prioritizing projects for our internal budget. Is that correct? So
And
if I put something in the number 1 spot, that doesn't mean that I think it's where we should spend our money. It's what I think that most likely for the state to give us money, or what I really want to ask for out of the Sears and Roebuck catalog.
Yes.
That is correct.
Okay. And I guess my only comment into that is staff, and I know that we just started this process last year, it's the second time doing this. I think staff should perhaps put a little bit more thought into not bringing projects on this list that we don't think there's any chance for the state to fund, because it crowds the list and it makes it more difficult for us to have that discussion on stuff that it's highly, highly unlikely that the state will be funding. And if we need to have another time when staff just presents their ideas to us, just for the sake of presenting ideas, that's fine. But I think it does confuse the discussion here. And we start debating the merits of projects that may or may not merit, but in the case of the ICIP, don't really matter. So, and then I guess my question to you, Chair, is what's the process going to be on ranking these?
Mr. Chair, if I
Go
may, excuse me, just wanted to make a couple of comments, and that is correct. It is not only for the state purposes and for the legislative session, but it's also for an internal purpose as well. Because as we are working with the budget, we are going to come up with a final budget. So the whole purpose of the June timeframe, we do all the ranking. Remember, we're going to be dealing with a final budget. Some of these projects have their own separate funding source that is not necessarily tied. So there might be, some projects might have the ability for the council to fund, whereas other projects, they're really competing more. As an example, one of the things that we're doing with this budget is we're consolidating all of the general capital fund projects, whether it's in building improvements under the capital improvement fund, all road projects will go to the road fund. So the council does allocate a certain amount of money that is really restricted for those kind of uses. So this prioritizing of this list gives the council also the ability to give staff some direction in saying we would like these projects to get done. If we can afford it internally, we'll do it internally. If not, then we want you all to seek grants or state funding.
Yeah, and I guess my comment to that is I'm not comfortable with this being the process where we give staff feedback about what our priorities are overall. The ICIP list, because it is something that we're directing to the state, cannot also be the same list that we use to tell staff what our priorities are. Because we might prioritize something higher as we're asking for the state, but that's not necessarily the priority we want staff to have on it. The ICIP is partly a political tool that we use in working with our legislators to get money done. That's, I think, where, I'd like a little bit more clarification and slash discussion with Joe, because I don't feel comfortable right now prioritizing this and then staff going away from this meeting saying, well, they said this was more important than this. I'm not comfortable saying that on all these projects. And so while I appreciate what you're saying there, that's not the purpose of the ICIP list. You have another master list of projects, which I believe, which is separate from this, and that really is our source of what the staff is using as far as the projects that you have on your radar, which is not the ICIP list. And I know we've had this debate a couple times, but we need to be clear about that.
Mr. Mayor.
If I may pitch into this, I understand what Councilor Roebuck's saying. I think one of the things that we, as a governing body, need to do is be doing this prioritization 6 months sooner. And where I'm going with that is that needs to be a discussion we have in January, because the fiscal year starts in, 26 days? And projects need time to be vetted, to be analyzed, to be reviewed, and I think it's incumbent upon us as a governing body to give staff clarity far enough in advance that staff can do the proper planning. So I think I agree with Councilor Roebuck that we needed to a different forum to do that planning, but I would argue it's a January for the next fiscal year. So that, once again, to be fair to staff, to make sure they have the time, and even then they can come back and say to us, hey, this doesn't work, or we can't do that, and then we make adjustments well before the beginning of the fiscal year. That's just my thoughts.
Joe, did you have anything to add to that?
No, nothing to add, other than, the list that is presented to you is the public affairs, what their priorities, what they believe are the priorities. And so I appreciate Ms. Jennings coming in and sharing that point. I believe there's a lot more work that still needs to be done by the city council on this. So just understand that this is the explanation as far as what these projects are for the public affairs. That's the pecking order that the department would like to see. Other than that, it does become the desire of where the city council is at for the final budget. Again, we have X number of dollars to spend on projects, and so you're going to allocate all of those dollars out by the time that the final budget is approved. And then I think I agree with the mayor that fixing the system so that we don't get into these little tight spots where we can't debate properly will be more effective in the future. Thank you.
Councilor Roebuck.
My question for the chair then, from a procedural standpoint, what's the process that you want to use as far as going through these lists? Because I mean, that's, I believe, what the action item there, the
Yes.
staff's asking for.
So really, there's a couple of ways we can do this. We can just go directly from the suggestions that's been given
Sure.
by Juanita and just put them forth as there. If there's anyone in here who has a desire for something to be reclassified on that list of pecking order, if you would say, we could always take what was presented from last year and just move it forward once again. It's really just the desire of what each of us would like to see happen. Let me just start out by saying, is there a particular project that was brought up that is of
So when we did this exercise, and again, I know that we're in the process of creating this process in some ways, where this is round two.
we are.
When we did it last time, we force ranked 5 projects. And that's what the information staff asked for. What information is staff asking for from us?
Within the budget book, if I believe it's tab 7, is that tab 7 for the capital projects? The information, all of the projects, the master list that you had alluded to is within that book. Now, if you go to the, I believe it's tab 1 or 2 where the budget summary sheet is, that'll give you the total number of what's available to be spent in this upcoming fiscal year. So at some point in time, we have to correlate the number to the project. And I may be wrong on the tabs because we have quite a few tabs within there, but it is that all of the master plan list is in the book, and we have the dollar amounts as well. They are not in the...
Only the projects that are in the budget.
Only the projects that are in the budget. So because like with water utility, we did not add any new projects. We extended the projects that we currently have.
Yeah, that is correct. And so what the council and the committees are seeing the rest of the projects that are in the master list. So they're going to be looking at all the master list in total as well.
So is there, and so is there still capital money within this next fiscal year budget that needs to be allocated to a project?
And that is the determination that will be made once we close the books in June 30th, that we know we reconcile all the figures.
Okay.
We will have that information as
Sure.
to which one may have a little bit additional capital. And again, having the list of the capital
Okay,
projects, then
wonderful.
we can come back.
All right.
And
So the capital projects that are in the budget are in the book currently. Now, when we reconcile the numbers at the end of July, there's a good chance that we will have leftover funding that can be allocated into other projects. And at that point in time, I think that's where these lists become important. So understanding what is in the list is probably the most important thing for the city council at this time.
Okay, so then, is it safe to say what you're asking for a blessing on these lists from us?
I think that, I don't know if we have to have the blessing today, other than be aware that the staff this is their pecking order for the list, as far as the explanation where that's at. I don't know if we need to actually take action from the Finance Committee or the City Council to bless the order tonight, or today. I think more than anything, it is more information for you right now, so that you're aware that this is the way it will be presented if there is available funding for it. Okay.
And I'm okay with that, if the chair's okay with that.
Yes,
yeah.
with that being said, then let me, Councilor Orpesa had something, and then Councilor Stubbs, you have something you'd like to say as well. If you want to go ahead and make your way up real quick, Judy, while Juan's speaking to us here. Councilor Orpesa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, the way I see it is the presentation is basically telling us this is the items that they would like to see, and this is the top 5 that they would like to see. You know, and I don't see whether we approve it or we don't approve it, it doesn't really matter at this point in time, and as far as I'm concerned, because you're still going to have to make a comparison to the top 5 overall. So the list that Juanita just went over, I mean, this is something that she would like for her department. And whether they make it up in the top 5 or not, it's really up to council. So I don't see what the big deal is about whether we approve it or we don't approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Orpesa. Counselor Stubbs, good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I just want to clarify in my own mind, I think that the Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan, which is what we're talking about, the Department of Finance and Administration within the state of New Mexico wants to see the funds or the projects that are funded through the legislature are projects that are in our top 5 list. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. The ICIP is a overall, what's the most important that you would like assistance from the legislators for our community.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, I also understand that DFA, the State Department of Finance Administration, also wants to know that primarily what we put on our list, especially the first 5, are projects that are planned and fairly well ready to go. Is that correct, too?
It doesn't always end up that way. We've had a couple projects that have come back from the state that we were not even aware
True.
of the importance to that level. So, and you have up to 4 years to spend the money that is provided within the ICIP. So there's plenty of time to develop it out there. So what we have said internally, though, is that we don't want to send a project up to the legislators as a potential project without having it fully vetted or maybe even prepared to a certain level with the planning, because we want that money to be utilized very quickly as it comes back to us. We're not willing to wait that 4-year window to develop out the plan. So really, I think what it was more internal for us to say, when we move up our top 5, we want to make sure that the planning is in place where we're at. So it's more of an internal structure with what you're saying.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. One other thing, if remember correctly, that there's no limit as to how many projects we can actually put on this list, but we want to make sure that whatever it is we put on there is something that's viable, important, fairly ready to go within the next 5-year time frame.
The ICIP list, the one that we did last year, had approximately 30 projects on the list. We have to, as requested by the state, we picked the top 5 of the most important ones for us, and those are the ones that get the most attention. The remainder of the ones on there are if there is a little bit of extra funding or anything that's available, then this is the stuff that the community really would like to see us do. And so and there is no limit to it. I believe that Roswell went through that they used to put every project on the list, and it just become a cacophony of just noise.
It was horrible.
So the idea is to reduce the list down to the things that are the most important at the time when we approve the list, and we provide the top 5.
And then just one other comment is that that is a list that we can show to almost anybody, whether it's a foundation out there, whether it's the federal government, different departments within either the federal government, the state government, or private entities, that we have put some thought into this project, and yes, we believe it merits at some point in time, depending on, ranking, I guess, but it depends. I mean, this is something we do want to see. It's sort of that proof. It's that assurance when we ask for something, or when someone wants to give us something, maybe, that we have put some thought into it. So if that's
Absolutely.
correct, too. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Stubbs. Let me just, let's just, for sake of the, you have something you wanted to bring up?
Yes,
Monica? Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair, we also have our IT director
Right.
here.
Yes, we'll
to
take
present.
that up in just a moment.
Okay.
I think what I would like to do is, if there's a counselor on committee that has particular heartburn or major concerns over what we've just heard proposed, then I'd like maybe to hear those now, so that we just giving direction, I guess we could say. If not, then I would just say that this council, just by consensus, lets this just move forward. Correct.
Mr. Chair,
Counselor Roebuck.
So, and again, really, this is whatever the staff information wants from us. I don't necessarily have anything, but what feedback do you want now on this list? Because there's obviously a lot of stuff to discuss on each of these lists.
Like I had said, on the lists that were presented thus far, if there's anything that are on those lists that is just an absolute major concern for anyone on this committee, let's make those views heard quickly. If there's not,
Sure.
then let's just let it just move forward.
Sure. Well, I think every dollar is a major concern, but
Yeah, I
I hear what you're saying. So I just want to make one comment then on the convention center in general. I don't have any specific feedback necessarily, although the convention center, of course, has had, since we've done this big, huge remodel, put a lot of money into this place. They've had, they had a personnel issue that was a huge hiccup, and then of course now we've had this shutdown that has created another huge hiccup. So it's kind of hard for us to see and project what it is. The other thing I'm always really sensitive about a lot of the stuff at the convention center is, and with all of our stuff too, is that how are we competing with the private sector? I think that, and again, I'm not the smoking, the kitchen equipment, the smoker, things like that. It's like, I know a lot of folks in this community put a lot of money into smokers, and they're not going to be super happy that the city's going out and buying one themselves. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it. I'm not saying it may not be the right thing to do, but those are huge considerations that we have to make when we do that, when we are competing with our private sector. I certainly understand the frustrations that staff has when private sector is not doing as good a job as they could be doing for the city. But those are delicate conversations that we need to be careful about. So those are my only general comments on that, and I have a general comment on the public relations one as well.
Hey, can we pull up the slide of the public relations?
My thought on the public relations, I just wanted to reiterate the importance of the visitor center. Visitor center. Not only does it serve the needs of the city, but the visitor center serves the needs of the private sector as well. They direct a lot of people out to our businesses, and the visitor center is. I've been in there. Our people in the center work awesome. They do a great job with what they've got, but it is not enough space, and it's very difficult for them to provide a welcoming environment and do the job they're tasked to do, which is sell merchandise now. And it's also to help these people come in, and it gets really crowded really quick in there, and so we definitely, that to me is a huge priority, because not only does it help the city with its purposes, but every time I'm in there, they are directing visitors to stay and go check out things that the city offers, and so that to me is a great place that we need to be investing, and we need to be asking for investment, and that's to me is from your department standpoint is the most important thing that we need to be spending money on, and that's an investment that will pay dividends because it increased tax revenue based on what we've seen, what they can do with what they have already. If we give them more, I think they're going to be able to do even more for the city. So I'm super encouraged to see that. I think number 2 really is number 1 on that. Is make that visitor center as awesome as we possibly can. Thank you.
Okay. Other counselors from the committee? Okay. All right, Juanita, thank you. We'll just move forward from there on that. Thank you. All right, let's hear, if we could, on the information technology.
Good morning. I'll make this simple, short for you. So, first of all, they forgot my slides in the presentation, but they're all in your packets. To start it out, my projects are going to be a little bit different besides number 1. The rest of them are kind of an ongoing ordeal that's going to have to be, with technology, stuff changes, technology changes. It has to be, switches have to be replaced, Wi-Fi access points have to be replaced, Wi-Fi controllers have to be replaced to keep the security measures up. So we listed some of that stuff on here, but those are going to be more of an ongoing kind of constantly. By the time we get one done, it's going to be time to start replacing again. But we'll start with my main concern is probably project name is Consolidated Dispatch, and what it is it started with PPRCC.
Sorry to interrupt. What page in the packet are we on?
Yeah. I'm not finding it either.
Page 75 and 78.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
I can wait for you if you want to find it.
Okay.
So I have a copy. I do not have it. Page 74.
Yeah, it's page 78 on the online version.
There, okay. All right. Okay, go ahead.
Let's find it. Okay, so the first one is Consolidated Dispatch, and what that is in 2015, PVRCC started a radio project going from analog to digital. I don't have the date back. Before that, the FCC required everybody to go narrowbanding. When we went from wideband to narrowband, it caused a huge issue and drop in communications. So, especially with the analog system. So we were going to, they decided to go to a digital P25 compliant analog or digital system. So that was started in 2015 with PBRCC. So it's kind of gone on with a mix of a lot of events that's happened over since 2015. But some of the good points of that is Karen Sanders was able to get like $1.8 million for this project. So right now we have $1.8 million into this project, and that money is spent. We have it broken down. If you want, I can get for you. It's repeaters, radios, mostly radios, handheld radios and portable radios, and repeaters. And it was kind of, it started out at $4.2 million or $4.5 million, the original project, and then as of September of this year, we finally got an actual plan in place. After all the changes that happened over there, we got an actual plan in place. So here's a whole entire engineered plan from E.F. Johnson on the radio system. So this year, you guys approved $407,000 in appeal for us. So the county matched that. So we actually put a little over $800,000, $802,000 or whatever it came out to be, is we have into it. So that completes the whole entire radio portion of the project, and that's where we're at right now. So we've done a lot of the tower work on their first site. It's broken into phases, like a in-town phase and an out-of-town phase. And we've pretty much funded the whole radio project, except for this to work, it has to talk to each other. And the part that's not funded that we're looking to seek is the microwave project, which will link 10 sites microwave so they can all talk. And this will give us this simulcast, multicast system so that the police officers and fire department can talk to each other. It's we're at kind of a dead end. So we spent the $1.something million, but we can't complete the project until we have the microwave in place. So that's kind of where we're at looking for the microwave. So if you break the numbers down, what it comes out to be is like a $2.47 million project. The county is 50% with us. We had $1.8 million in grants, and the city's going to end up paying 34.27% of this project to have a $2.4 million system when it comes down to the end of it. But that's our big one we're pushing for, because like this is public safety. This is police, fire, dispatch, so they can talk. There's places that the cops will be right here in town and can't talk to dispatch, or it's so staticky they can't hear them. And it's been a little over a year ago, year and a half ago, the county had a problem out east of town and they couldn't talk to dispatch, and there was weapons involved in it and stuff. So, I mean, it's a pretty important project, and we're, $800,000 from completing this $2.4 million project. So I hate to leave this one of those ones that gets uncompleted. So that's kind of the spiel on that. I got a whole bunch of information. If anybody wants to see it, we can talk later, or you can call me or email me. I'll bring down the rest of my list real quick. All these aren't going, like I said, the workstations, we're trying to get all the workstations repaired or replaced every 5 years. We're still in the process. We still have not got them all replaced since IT started. We've been trying to do 40 a year. This year we dropped it down to have like 15 or something like that just because of the budgets. The next one down is fiber connectivity. That we completed that already. It's still on this list, but it's showing it done. We completed that within another project. And like I say, here's like the Wi-Fi, the switches, the EOL, what we call end of life. So every so often, the manufacturer will say, hey, we're not going to support this. We're not going to make any more security updates or anything for this. So that's going to be kind of an ongoing deal. But like I say, there's ways we can get to where it's not so impactful on that. Just do part of the time, or department fund their own sites, or we can work around that. But like I said, that's going to be continuing. The next one's kind of a wish list. It's MPLS routing. So right now, when we built the network, we built it flat, which was okay at the time, but right now we have so many IP devices on it. I mean, you look at all the IP stuff in here, and everything talks all the time. There's chatter, so much chatter on the network, it kind of delays it. If we went into a routing system, we could eliminate a lot of the chatter just to give us better improvement on the network. But like I say, that's not a mandatory, that's a wish list. It's like going to the Sears and Roebuck catalog. And the next one down is server replacement. So what we've been doing there is we replaced almost all of our servers, and then as we did that, we bought the kind of the lower end servers so we could afford them. Then we did some upgrades, so we're pretty good there. So that's not, I mean, it's still going to be an ongoing deal listed here, but it's kind of a ongoing process. So it's not nothing that's, we've been doing it piece by piece, server by server, you know, processor by processor is kind of how we've been upgrading them. So that's about it on this list. Like I say, our big one's just to finish the one project we started for the public safety people.
And I do have a question for you on that. So that 420 there, that will complete that project?
Correct. That 420,000 will complete the microwave, which will complete the entire project.
Okay. That's good to hear that project's coming close to fruition. I know that the some of the severities they've had with that.
Right. The radio project's completely funded and about 75% in place. But we can still get everything, all that in place, but it's still going to be the same as it was until we get the microwave up.
Okay. All right. Questions, discussion from committee? Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation in that. So we will move forward with that and see what happens there. Let's move forward to the resolution adopting the new funds for museums, Spring River Zoo, and Golf Fund.
Mr. Chair, Juan Fuentes will, Stephen Martinez will present for you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. So, what this resolution would accomplish is separating the museum, is there a slideshow? Do I need to hit it right? I'm sorry, I'm not good with this stuff. There? Oh, okay. Yeah, so it would just set up a special revenue fund for the museum, Spring River Zoo, and the golf course. And what that does is it allows them to basically keep all the revenue that they generate, and it also kind of allows them to, in a way, if they can grow their revenue above what the match would be, then it would, again, alleviate the city even further, and also it could expand their budget over time. And so what the city is proposing is subsidizing a cash balance before July 1st, so it's not a transfer out, which would keep the budget balanced in the general fund. And so what that amount would be is $570 for the museum and $510 for the zoo and $160,000 to the golf course. Oh, yeah. And so I'll stand for any other questions.
Any questions from committee? Okay.
No, I appreciate this move by staff. I know we've talked about it a lot in different processes, but I think it's important to say it in committee that, you know, we want these institutions to be strong. And this allows the people who believe in these institutions, it allows the people, our staff that are working for them, that they know that when they work hard and they generate revenue, that they get to keep that revenue within their institution. And those the people who come in and buy tickets or who donate or who shop at these locations, they know that money is going back into that. And so for our citizens especially, or our visitors, they know that the money they're spending there is not going to fund anything else in the city. And it really it allows that strength. These institutions with this setup can become as strong as they really want to be. So I'm as far as creating these budget lines, I'm certainly excited about it. I'm glad we're moving in that direction. Thank you.
Councilor Orpesa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I'm not sold on this at all. I think that that the city has a responsibility to make sure that we support these quality of life services. Because again, what we're doing is we're asking them to generate their own monies. And to me, it seems that with the taxes that we each pay, it should be sufficient to be able to support these kind of quality of life issues. And I don't care what any other counselor says, whether it's their opinion that this is a business or not. My opinion is that the city is not a business, and so we shouldn't run it as a business. That we are a municipality to serve and provide quality of service for the people. And they are the ones that fund through the different taxes that to be able to maintain and be able to enjoy the quality of services that the city provides. And I can tell you that I ran the visitor center for about 5 years. And one of the things that visitors that came from out of town, one of the expressions or suggestions that they made, or comments that they made, was the fact that we had a free zoo out there, and they were able to go out there and enjoy the zoo. And the same thing with the museum. And so when you start talking about limiting the number of people that are going to go out there because they can't reach the funding, then we are hurting our own selves, and we are going to more than likely not create the tourism that we should and we have in the past. And so for that reason, I don't support this resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Kennard.
I wanted to say that I think that this is a good alternative to. I know that people are concerned that we're wanting to shut down, the museum or the zoo, but I really feel like this is we have to be creative right now in the financial situation that everyone is in. And I think that this is a good way to, and I know that the city manager said at our budget workshop that this gives the museum something to work towards. I mean, in a year or 2 years, if this isn't met, we're not going to shut down the museum, but rather it gives them an opportunity to keep more of their money, that the income that they generate. I haven't traveled everywhere, but I've gone to several different places, and when you're a tourist, I have never expected anything to be free, and I go knowing that there might be an entry fee. I actually looked that stuff up before we go so we have an idea. I looked at the Albuquerque Museum, and they charge $6 per adult. I believe it's $4 for senior citizens, or I can't remember what else is in that. Children under 12 are free. So, you know, I don't think that this is going to really hurt too many people. I know that you had talked about having events where you could go to the museum without charge. You know, so I think that the city has, and the staff has really kind of worked through this to make sure that it's available to people, you know, maybe certain times, not all the time. I don't know, I just feel like when you look at these numbers, I mean, this is the city for years and years and years has covered this and kept these things afloat, but I think that it allows the museum, the zoo, I know the zoo is working and they've done a great job in becoming creative and bringing attention to the zoo and getting people out there. So I don't necessarily see this as a negative thing, is my comment. Thank you.
Let me go to Mr. Nebb, and then I have some things to say before we move forward. Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to put a little bit more umbrella, and I appreciate what Councilor Rapace is alluding to as far as that is. This is a city council decision to figure out exactly how to divvy up all of the funding that you have available. I would also, though, and I just got 2 points on this thing. So the first one on the overall budget, all the way through the public safety complex conversation, we talked about $48 million worth of building repairs that need to be done with our existing buildings. That includes all of these other buildings that are out there. We have a street inventory inspection report that shows that if we were to do our streets correctly, we need $16 million. We've been spending $5 million. The money that goes to these repairs come out of the same fund that we are utilizing for all these other services. And I would say that I would like us to spend our tax dollars more appropriately on the things that we deal with every day, and we utilize tourism dollars, and people that come and visit, we borrow as much money from them that when they enjoy our community, they leave their money, and we do the extraordinary things on top of that. I think that's one of the concepts that you'll have to decide as a city council. One of the other pieces I want to make sure, and I know Mr. Martinez did not cover this one in as great a detail. If we leave these three funds or these three services in the general fund, if the zoo, and we've had conversations with the zoo for the last 3 years about resetting and charging a little bit for that, for every dollar that the zoo charges, 66% of that dollars goes to public safety. It does not go to the operation of the zoo, which means then you have to charge more on that dollar in order to make any benefit back to the service of the zoo or the service of the museum. So if they're left in the general fund, every dollar that they generate, and that's good for our police and fire that cannot generate their own money, but what we're saying is that these are the services that can generate money. I keep trying to get a ticket quota back out for the police department and charging per ticket. We can't do that. I can't charge every time that the fire department goes to somebody's house to save a life. I can't charge for that. What we can do is we can offset that on the other side, and these are services that are decided on by the public as to whether or not they want to support, whether or not they want to attend. And in my mind, that's where we offset these other costs that are very important to our core services. But I just wanted to make sure you understood that if any one of these entities, these services provide or charge one more dollar, and then these funds stay in the general fund, that dollar gets divvied up. And I will say that I talked about 66% going to public safety. That $1 for the zoo generates 1.6 cents for the zoo. So every dollar charged for the zoo generates 1 penny, 1.5 cents for the operation of that thing. I really believe that if we want to have these services survive, we need to give them the opportunity to survive on their own, so they're not affected by all the other variables that are out there. That's all I had to say.
Let me just say just a couple of things, and I think Councilor Roebuck's wanting to say something, and I believe, Ms. Fleming, you have come, I'm going to assume, on this subject here. Usually, public participation's at the end, but because it's relevant to what we're speaking about, I'm going to give you the opportunity to speak in just a moment to us, okay? Let me just say a couple of misnomers, that some things that have been said. I've had some people approach me in the community that have said, please don't shut down our museum. Please don't do that. And I have no intention on that museum being shut down. I had a really wonderful conversation with someone the other day who had concerns about putting these enrichment services in their special revenue funds. Once we got done with the conversation, they better understood this is not for a reason of shaming or a reason of trying to cause someone to put them in a position of failure. It's to put them in a position to greater succeed. It truly is. For the money that's brought in right now, they don't see it again. The benefit does not come back to them. You know, I hesitate to equate it to an analogy I gave the other day to someone, but you know, a couple of things. When you're riding a bicycle, you know, your parents always got a hold of the back of it and got a hold of the back of it. Well, you're really, you become strong, you become focused, and you become endearing when you're finally allowed to ride that bicycle. When I was learning how to swim, I was put in the water. You know, I don't believe that my teacher was going to let me drown by any means. That's not the priority of the city, is to force the museum or force the zoo or to force the golf course to drown. We're just trying to help them learn how to swim without the floaties, without that's the best analogy I can bring to it. I've had many discussions with our management concerning this. I personally went to the museum, spent a significant amount of time with the director and with the curator and with the foundation person there with Cindy Torres. We had a wonderful, good conversation. I did another tour, as I have many times before. We talked about what it takes to make that museum function. We spent an exuberant amount of time over in the classrooms and the clay area and different things. I went and I toured the back end of the golf course to see what does it take behind the scenes to make this golf course what it has to be. There's a whole lot more than someone just sitting on a lawnmower all day out there at the golf course. I went to the adult center. I've done these tours and tried to speak with these different entities, but specifically in this area. I don't think there's anyone from any of these departments that recognize we are in a peculiar situation. None of us asked for COVID to come to Roswell, New Mexico, but it's here, and no one asked for businesses to have to shut down or for things to have to close down, but we're in a situation that we're forced to do things that maybe we don't want to do. Everybody likes free, but free at the end of the day is not always the best quality product that we can present. So I think that we have an opportunity to make the zoo better, to make the golf course better, to make the museum better. And we got three great things here in our city when we come to those specifics. But in the creation of this account, we're giving an opportunity for those dollars to stay within there, and an opportunity to think outside of the box instead of government just bringing a continuance into that situation. Government does not always make things better, I guess is the best way of saying things. So I'll leave those comments right there for just a moment. Let me go to Councilor Roebuck, and then I'd like to hear from Ms. Fleming.
Thank you, Chair. There are lots of services that the city charges for. I'll specify one I think everybody pays for is water. Now, by the logic presented earlier, we shouldn't charge people for water because we're all paying taxes, but we do charge people for water because that's a service people use, and when typically speaking, where we can, we charge for services that we can understand what the usage is. We charge for people to go into our new pool because we know who's using it. It's a usage fee. Because we don't generate enough GRT to give water away or the pool away. And frankly, we don't generate enough GRT to provide these services for free. Now, the museum, the zoo, and the golf course, all three to me are things that I'm going to fight for. We're not going to let these things die. That would be foolish. They are, the museum especially, and I've said this 1,000 times, if not more. The museum is extremely well run. It is a treasure. Our community is proud of it. We're very proud of it. We are not going to let this die, but also we have this other problem, which, and I appreciate the city manager referring to it, is that the roads can't generate money, and the roads are falling apart. They just can't. And so are we to just let the roads continue to fall apart? And keep giving away these things for free, or we're going to try to be creative and generate revenue where we can. The other thing too, as a counselor, I think it's imperative, at least this is the values that I make decisions by as a counselor. I want to take the money that comes in, our tax revenue, and make sure that we are creating the maximum good for the most people, the maximum good for the most of our citizens. The museum especially serves a very small number of people. The zoo we don't know about because we haven't been getting good numbers for. Because of that, it's hard for me to say that, well, if I spend money on roads, which benefits everybody, versus the small contingent of people that use the museum. Now, granted, I don't want the museum to go away, and I think that, and I know this is like a broken record. We've talked about the museum as an underutilized resource. We need to figure out how not to be an underutilized resource. As somebody who is in the tourism industry, who I make my living off tourists, I love the museum. I love anything we have here. I love the golf course. I love the zoo. Because the more things that we have, the more people want to come to Roswell. That helps me. That helps all of our businesses. We want these things to stay, and we want them to thrive. But we just simply cannot say, there's just simply not a blank check that goes on forever, and I think everybody understands that. But I think and I've addressed some of these online, but the rumors that we want to shut down any of these things is incorrect. What I think, for everybody on staff and every council I've talked to, we want these things to thrive. We want them to thrive. If they thrive, they are better for our community, and that's what we're working towards. And at the end of the day, this particular thing that we're discussing right now isn't really, we're not budgeting for these things. We're just creating an ability to help, I think, to help them thrive. We're not trying to back anybody into a corner. We want the best for this, and so I think anything. I've not spoken with anybody who has anything less than those good intentions. We want Roswell not to shrink. We want Roswell to grow. We want our services to get better. We want our museum to get better. We want our zoo to get better. We want our golf course to get better. I'll end with this analogy. At some point in time, and I wish this analogy wasn't. I take the political part out of it for a moment, if you can. But several unions about a decade ago lost their ability to compel membership dues, and those unions became stronger, not weaker, when they lost that ability to compel those dues. They served their constituency better. They had a stronger voice politically, and it was because there wasn't a free ride, because they had to work for it, because they had to meet the needs of their constituents. And that's what's going to happen with the zoo. That's going to happen with the Arts Center. They're going to have to adjust. And as they meet those needs, those constituents are going to support them. Last comment is on the budget side, because I think it's going to be debated, and I'll just get it out of the way so I don't have to say it later. But when we're talking about a 70-30 split, or whatever split we're talking about, we're talking about the operations budget. The city still provides, I mean, the golf course doesn't pay rent, the zoo doesn't pay rent for the land, the museum doesn't pay rent for the land. The city still, we're actively looking at projects to improve those. I mean, right now with the zoo, we're spending, $250,000 of our own money, I believe, and matched with donations to build the thing out there. So we're still investing into these things. But if we don't make these things strong, if these waves keep hitting, we don't know what's going to happen in the fall, if there's going to be another shutdown. We haven't got out of this shutdown yet. These waves keep hitting. The stronger we make these institutions, the better they'll be able to survive these waves in the future. And that's our goal, is that we want to make these things as strong as possible. And any implication other than that is just false. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Give me just one moment to allow Ms. Fleming to come up if you would like to, and give public comment there. Good morning, and
Good morning.
Somebody just keep time. It will give you the
Oh,
3
I got
minutes.
it timed.
You
Yeah,
got it
and I'm
down.
just going to stick to my,
Thank you.
I'm just going to stick to what I prepared because I think it's important to put it on the record.
If you would, just for the record, state your name for us.
Yes, it's in here. Okay. Chairman Perry and council members, my name is Nancy Fleming, and I have the good fortune to be the director of the Anderson Museum of Contemporary Art, which itself was hit this year with major budget reductions. I'm here in person to commend the extraordinary work of the Roswell Museum and Art Center, its excellent staff under the leadership of Caroline Brooks. The museum, its planetarium, and all the educational and cultural programming it offers has certainly been the most coveted gem of the city of Roswell for 83 years. We can't minimize its importance. This is an institution built as a public works project in the biggest depression in America's history. As a city entity, it has weathered economic downturns when the Walker Air Force Base closed in the 60s, the oil plummet in the 80s, and now we come to COVID in 2020. The resolution removing RMAC from the city's core budget sends the message that the institution is being sidelined rather than valued and protected. This move, on top of the huge 44% budget reduction, is burdensome and unfair. Because of the RMAC's presence and stability in Roswell, it has led to the formation of the Pecos Valley Potters Guild, the Roswell Fine Arts League, the Roswell Artists in Residence Program, the Anderson Museum of Contemporary Art, the Miniatures and Curious Collections Museum, Bone Springs Art Space, Isaac's Galleries, all cultural groups that have strengthened Roswell's draw as a tourist destination, an attraction to businesses and to people looking to relocate. As a former arts teacher, I know also the importance of RMAC to the RMAC schools and to art education. I volunteered at a family arts night that drew an unprecedented cross-section of our community, 500 people embracing creativity, learning about our Southwestern heritage, exploring space in the Robert H. Goddard Planetarium. That level of quality of experience would have been welcome in any large city and extremely rare to find in other cities of our size. RMAC continues to be the center of our arts community and an example for museums throughout the Southwest. Our city should not marginalize this impact. I am worried this resolution forces an already minimal museum staff to become a fundraising machine instead of the creative community leaders that they are. RMAC is and has been an essential service that should be kept accessible to everyone, regardless of their economic standing. Let it weather the economic storm as it has for the past 83 years as part of the city. Meanwhile, I and many others will do everything we can to help them, but I urge city leaders to decrease its extremely deep financial cuts and maintain it as an essential core budget item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well appreciated. Councilor Orpesa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, one of the things that we talk about is increasing the funding. as far as these entities are concerned, but we don't discuss what happens if they're not able to attain those kind of fundings. Are we going to not save them? Are we still going to be able to protect them? And one of the reasons that people are, at least I got about 4 calls after the meeting on Thursday because of the presentation or the comments that one counselor made of the possibility of closing if we get so dire into a situation that there's a possibility of closing these services. And I don't know, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know, I don't care how you cut it. The pandemic is not the reason that we're doing this. This has been discussed in the last 2-3 years. And so now, because we have this situation with the pandemic, I think we're making an excuse that this is the reason we're going to go down this way, when all of along we've been trying to go down this way. And so I think we need to be honest with people, that it's not just because of the pandemic situation that we're having this discussion, that we've been talking about it for a while. And so my question is, again, if they're not able to succeed and meet the funding criteria that has been set on this resolution, what is it that we, the city council and the city, are prepared to do with it? Thank you.
I'm going to respond to that, but I'm going to let you speak first. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to stay on the broader level. It does not matter if these are set up as special revenue accounts or in the general fund or even as an enterprise fund. The city council has the right to transfer money around within the fund that is not restricted for its use. So if the economy gets worse, then the city council can choose as to how to allocate out the funding that we now know at a lesser level. If the economy gets better, you'll have the ability to fund accordingly by the way the money comes in on the other side. The setting up of this, it only does, for every dollar that they generate, it keeps it within that entity. And that's the best thing for these services. It has no other bearing with that. There is, I think, like Councilor Foster had mentioned about the art center as well, that 2021 subsidy is 82% of that budget for this year. There's nothing that says that the city council cannot make the determination that they want to sustain that or change that. The only thing that will cause your conversation is the availability of the cash to do it. And that's all I wanted to make sure I added into that on that broader level.
Okay. Let me just say this, and I think that probably each counselor's already made up their mind as to where we're probably going to be. So we could talk forever on this, or we could vote here soon. But let me just say this. I don't think that there's anyone in this room, I can only speak for myself, that believes that we don't want any of these to succeed. I've not been on the council for the last 2 years, so I can't speak as to what was discussed over the last 2 years. But if there was discussion on moving these things in this direction, I don't think it would have been in a way to devise a way for them to fail. I think it was to make things better for all the way around. There's one thing of having discussions about doing something and then when the rubber meets the road, being put into a position to where it's time that we have to do something. I don't know how anyone else in here does their budget at their home, but when we are without certain monies, when somebody takes a pay cut or something significant happens and our income is significantly hit, I have to make choices as to where that money is going to go. And my first choice is not going to be the movie theater or the eating out in the nice restaurants or the vacations or those things that I enjoy. as a part of life. Those things are going to go into the security of my family and what it takes to keep my family safe and protected. We cannot forget that the main, in my opinion, and the way I view things and look at things, is the main priority of a municipality is for infrastructure and safety. I'm grateful for those extra things. I am a supporter of the museum. I utilize our museum. I'm one of those that when I travel, that's one thing my family does. We look for museums to enjoy. We look for zoos. My children enjoy those things. We recognize that there's a cost associated with those services being presented. When I spoke to museum staff, I didn't have any fight whatsoever from museum, and not that I went with any kind of motive in that. I wanted to hear from them. I didn't hear any concerns whatsoever that charging at the museum was a problem. As a matter of fact, I won't say which one, but one of the staff members said, you know what, it's even been shown that when people pay to come into a facility, they're more likely to maybe even come and to appreciate what we have. I know that when my family travels, we have gone into some facilities that are free, and we've just learned through the years that when there's a price tag associated with something, we have an expectation, and we are more likely to utilize those. I recognize, the museum staff recognizes as well, that not everybody has that opportunity, and we do want it to still be a community museum. It should be a community museum. It is a jewel, as was stated earlier. It's unbelievable what we have over there. I do believe that when our children come from the school systems, that should still be something that we allow for them to come and to appreciate and to enjoy those things. I do believe that we should, that museum could be afforded the opportunity to allow for family days or community days periodically throughout the year to allow for those kind of things to take place and happen. I know where I am from, and people start rolling their eyes when I start talking about Chattanooga, Tennessee, but we had a zoo in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It was free for years. It was underutilized. The big attraction there was Hank, who was a chimpanzee, and it was underutilized. No one hardly went. It was going down. It was running down. The decision was made by that city council to start charging to go through that zoo, and that all of a sudden, people who were visiting Chattanooga, who were coming to see the Chattanooga Choo Choo, who were coming to see our aquarium, our Lookout Mountain, our Civil War history and everything there, all of a sudden were coming to the zoo. And that experience that they have there now compared to that experience when it was free is night and day difference. But they did a similar thing where they had to pull it from just where the pool of money was coming from, with police and with roads and with everything else, put it in a place to where the monitoring of the finances was easier and clearer to be defined and seen, and a greater appreciation was made by the community, by those who visited, and by those who had an investment in their employment and other things within that zoo. And now it's a wonderful thing. I think we have an opportunity to make a wonderful museum, a wonderful zoo, and a wonderful golf course even greater. So I will leave those there. Councilor Stubb has asked if she could say something real quick, very quickly, and then if any other from our committee wants to say something, and then I'd like us to take a vote. Councilor Stubbs.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much, committee. I don't want to really belabor all of this, but just one point is that I know that the city is putting what we're calling a subsidy into these three departments that will definitely cover staffing. So I don't think there's a real concern there. I think it's important to mention that. I think too, just to sum it all up in my head, these three departments will no longer be commingled, as Mr. Nebb talked about, with everybody else, and we'll be able to track them, and they'll be able to know exactly what they have, as will everyone else. And I think that that's really important. You said it so much better than I, and went into the details. So I think I have my notes here. That's really important. I want to ask one question, and then I want to make a request of you, and that is, does this all include the planetarium, or is it separate? I couldn't find in the budget one.
Planetarium is part of the museum.
Yes.
So the planetarium is included in this
The
budget,
museums.
and when we talk about museum, we're also talking about
Yes.
planetarium. Thank you. Okay, the last thing I'd like to say is that, I don't know, 8 or 9 months ago, we established within the Finance Committee that these resolutions that are affecting the budget and requests to the Department of Finance would include not project numbers, what do I want to say?
Resolution numbers?
No, the account numbers, I guess.
Oh, the fund.
Fund.
Yes.
Fund. The fund numbers. So I would just sort of request of the committee that when you approve that resolution, I'm assuming to send to full council on consent, that maybe you would add a whereas there that just lists whereas the city would be creating fund number this, this, and this that are designated for these 3 accounts. And that to me says we can figure out what goes where and when it happened and that sort of thing if the resolution has that information.
Yes, we will add that to the resolution. We have established 3 funds, and so we can definitely add them to the resolution.
I just think it's really important when you look back at all these resolutions that you know what you're looking for and that you see it right away, and that it's specific to DFA, so they know too what we're talking about. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Stubbs. Counselor Roebuck.
Thank you. You know, as I communicate with people who are worried about the museum's cuts and potential closure of the museum, which really never was on the table, this dollar amount right there, that 2021 subsidy, that is 2% of our projected GRT, of our tax revenue, sales tax revenue. That to me is for a community to commit 2% of their, with all the other things that we have to run and manage, that's a significant commitment from this community. And I know that it's not as much money as they got last year or the year before, but as far as we look at the piece of the pies that we're giving out, I don't want anybody to look at this and say, wow, that the city council is not supporting or doesn't believe in the museum. The fact that we're taking 2% of our budget with all the other things we have to pay out of this budget, fire, police, roads, parks, administration, right there alone, you're looking at, with those three enrichment services, we're looking at roughly 5%, a little over 5% of our GRT dedicated to those services. I think that we are dedicating a significant portion of the revenue that we are getting in to those services. And then we have been having, to Councilor Pace's point, which I think is a very valid point, we have been having these discussions. This is not just because of the budget numbers are because of the shutdown, the actual money we have to have, but we have been having discussions about the zoo, about the museum, about the golf course for years, about how do we make those stronger, better institutions. And that's, I think, those discussions did not just start now. So I concur with him, but I think the discussions have always been, how do we make these institutions stronger? Thank you.
And I would just add, because all of these funds are affected a little bit differently. Now, COVID-19 caused us to constrict very quickly, but the zoo is a good example that 3 years ago we started with the zoo. They had an $880,000 budget. It is down to $510,000. They got another 20% reduction in this year's budget. The ability for the zoo, though, is that we had time to bring them down. The challenge we have with COVID-19 is that the money is not there now, and that's the biggest challenge we have with this. We will protect every one of these as best we can, but I would say that the experience at the zoo has exponentially grown with the less amount of money, because there's a virtual zoo out there on the Facebook right now on social media. You can see all about the animals and everything else. We believe that the museum, we believe that the golf course has that same ability as we move through that. But it was over $800,000. We're down to $500,000 now for the zoo as an example of focusing on what we want that entity to be as well too. And so keep in sight of that stuff. I mean, the numbers will change. This is a snapshot in time, and we'll move forward again. And just back to that question, the resolution itself sets this up so that we can put them into the budget appropriately as special revenue accounts. That's what the request is.
All right. There's nothing else from committee members. I would like to see the question brought to the table. Did you have anything else? Okay. All right, so we have the resolution adopting new special revenue funds for the Museum Arts Center, Spring River Zoo, and Golf Fund, with the caveat, whoever makes the motion, if you are making a motion in favor, please consider the addition of a whereas creating the fund numbers as appropriated. I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we recommend to full council the adopting Resolution 20XX, a resolution of the City of Roswell, New Mexico, adopting new special revenue funds for the Museum and Art Center, Spring River Zoo, and Golf Fund, to include a whereas that specifies the account numbers?
Fund number.
Fund numbers, I'm sorry, fund numbers.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second, and those fund numbers are 4221, 4232, and 4233. Okay. We have a motion and a second to send to full council, recommendation to approve with the changes made. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion passes. We're going to take a quick 4-minute recess, so we're at 11:12, we will reconvene. All right, it is 11:12. I'm going to call the meeting back to order. We could have councilors come back together. Okay, now if we could go to item number 6, consider scope of services for wayfinding RFP.
Ms. Jennings?
Could we have IT come in too? Could we find, we've got a microphone issue.
Hello?
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Okay. All right. So this is the action item today is to consider the scope of services to issue an RFP for wayfinding and signage for the city of Roswell. And when I say wayfinding, it is not just directional signage to attractions. It actually includes signage within some of our amenities that are wayfinding. But before I begin, I did want to give you guys a little bit of background because I know we have new counselors, and it's also new for me because I was coming into this project kind of halfway through. In 2016, the city adopted a wayfinding master plan. I believe it was 6 entry signs that were designed, fabricated, and installed throughout the city. They also had concepts for downtown wayfinding that were developed, and the overall projects and implementation was kind of put on hold. Then the wayfinding project was transferred from the Community Development Department to Public Affairs in January. And so that's a little bit of the background. I don't see the other, where's the presentation?
Can I just stop and ask you one question here?
Yeah.
That
Uh-huh.
one question, it said 6 entry signs. I can think of 5. Where's the 6th one? There's the airport, there's the one.
It might be 5.
and there's
Is there
the
only
one-
5? Okay, that is my error. I apologize.
Okay, I'm sorry, okay. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You are correct. Sorry about that. So kind of here's just a timeline, a background. As you guys can see, these are the entryway signs that were developed in 2015 and 2016. In 2019, we did launch the new brand, and I appreciate our community development and engineering department to work with us on the downtown signage. Those are the 2 signs that you see at the bottom. The first option was kind of what they had proposed that would be similar to what had been previously approved. And then I did request if we could try to tie in the new brand a little bit further with some different color schemes. And so the last image is what was approved and our compromise. So as we looked at that and I looked at the master plan, there wasn't really what's the next steps or how does this impact? Are there specific areas of the city that also need wayfinding? And so I thought that if we could have an RFP that is strategically developed to say, here's the needs for the community, it would allow us to come up with a system. So this is what I had previously presented last year. There were 2 different concepts that ties in our community branding throughout the city. It would incorporate bus stops, it would incorporate directional signage at the zoo, like where to find animals, where to find things. It would incorporate signage out here at the museum that says Museum Planetarium. If you drive right out here, there's really not great signage that says, hey, this is our amazing planetarium. It would also help us direct people out to Cielo Grande. So again, just a little bit of background. The full project action item, 1, we were going to rank them on the ICIP list. That's kind of what you guys talked about, if this is even important. The second one would be to develop and send out this RFP scope of services, have that reviewed and either approved, and then move into funding for this project. So the goal of building this RFP is to have a wayfinding signage system for the city of Roswell that directs the visitors to a wide variety of community amenities and incorporate some of the things that you guys developed in that master plan and trying to tie it all together. And then also have an actual phased plan of action to do this. So the scope of service for this, what you guys will be voting on today, is number 1, assessing the existing conditions and needs of what we currently have within the city. Number 2, develop that recommendation. This is what the contractor would do, is develop that recommendation of signage types and placements. There's a lot of things that we will have to comply with as far as roads and streets, and that's where my partners in community development will support me and help me, right, Bill? And task number 3 would be the signage elements, the fabrication, building of those signage, and then task 4 would be approval and installation of that plan. And so that is what the goal of the scope of service would be to those that would be bidding on this project. Any questions?
I guess I just, a question and then a comment. I guess I didn't see that part in it. So strategy and analysis has still not been done on wayfinding?
You have, there's a master plan that was put together. I believe that some of the direction of current council has changed from what that plan indicated. So it would be an opportunity for the current council to either say, yes, we want to continue on some of that path, no, we don't, or let's start fresh and actually put it to work. As you can see, in 2015, we're now 2020. We still don't have the wayfinding in the downtown area that had been approved. It was kind of halted. So this is taking the project from start to finish, again, because it started and stopped.
I guess for me, just what I have to say is, I'm just ready to see, and this isn't a knock on management at all, but I am so ready to see this project done. I'm going all the way back to 2011 when I started, on committees discussing this thing with planning and zoning. That was the committee that was, talking about it way back in 2011. We're almost 10 years out, and we're back at square one again. So I am ready for us to move forward. There's so much that Roswell has missed out on by not having wayfind, and I know there's bigger fish to fry. I know there is, but how many things are people? We constantly tell each other, well, if we could just keep people in town one more night, if we could just get people to do this, we just, those kind of things. Well, if we don't provide them the means, then our expectations are not merited. I just want this council so badly to not get hung up with, well, I didn't want it to be green, I wanted it to be orange. I didn't want it to be metal, I wanted it to be wood. At this point, I'm ready to go out like Granny Clampett and take me, a piece of wood and some paint, and start painting and putting up up signs to let people know where to go. What kind of timeline, if there's an RFP that is recommended to full council was to approve, what kind of timeline could we projectedly see to actually going down Main Street and seeing something?
We would issue, it would go to council next week on the 12th, and then it would be issued on June 21st, and it would be open for 4 weeks. At that time, then it would go to an evaluation committee. I've left it open for 1 week, and my goal is to have it back at city council by the August meeting, because it'd have to go to a committee in July, to September.
That would be just for the issuance of the RFP.
The issuance of the RFP. And so the whole goal is to have everything kind of prepared in this current calendar year, 2020, and then start with my goal would be to have a phased approach. So we would have initial phase 1, January to June 30th of 2020. Phase 2 would start with fiscal year 22 and continue on, because I do not believe we can get all of the things that we want done in 1 year due to pricing and cost.
Here's my
goal.
2 cents worth. I would love to see something done before city elections.
Okay.
To where everybody's, well, we got a new council, so let's just start all over and let a new council, not that I've got to be the guy that's got to, push, but I don't want to be here in a year and almost 2 years from now, with, we've got it's a new council, so, they may have different ideas. this is taxpayers' money, and I'd like to if this is going to be something that's considered, which I do think is a good thing to consider, I'd like to see it absolutely saw through this.
Certainly,
tonight.
Counselor. If I could, I want to simplify some of the conversation really quickly as well, too, is that wayfinding is kind of like a funnel. And so we did the big wayfinding signs on the outside of town that just says, "Welcome to Roswell." That's the part that was done. The City Council has approved some signage for directional signage down Main Street. There's 14 of those signs, I believe, that are going up to direct people to all of the amenities. Where we are headed right now is, and I'm going to flip back there,
Oh,
Juanita,
sorry.
because if you look at in that concept one, there's pedestrian wayfinding, parking signage, and directory. So we are funneling down. The plan that we had, the initial plan, did not cover the detail to that level. And so having a little bit more information, walking through this thing, it is prudent to do that, but I would agree with you that we are not going to spend a lot of time on strategy and analysis. It is really placement of the signs as to when you get off onto Richardson or Virginia, how do you get to where we're trying to go? Where is the city parking? Where's all these amenities at? That's where we're at within this wayfinding structure. So it's taken a lot longer than it should have. However, that it does funnel down, and this thing should speed up faster. And I would say that I appreciate exactly what you're saying, is that for that next election, we should have a lot of the signage up. I mean, that's a 2-year time frame essentially.
So you talked about the signs that are going to be going up Main Street, wayfinding.
Yeah, those have already been approved. They're the ones that are on Main Street.
What are were
And
those
that
up there?
one, that's essentially what you see at the bottom there over on, which one is it? The one on
green
the
one?
right?
Yes.
The one on the right is very similar to that. So those are directional signage. So that takes you off the state highways, gets you off to the side. However, we want to put parking signs down Richardson here and to direct
Well,
you into the museum.
You have people there again, the concern with the museum. If we want to see the museum to flourish, we've got to do our part with helping people to recognize.
That's a very good point.
How to get into the museum. I mean, the address on Google for so long for the museum. And this one thing I'm very grateful for our director, who has worked very hard over there to get it done. Just for years, people have said, well, it's just going to take too long. When I was employed over at Tabernacle Baptist, it was almost on a daily basis. I'd come out to get in my car, and there'd be people at the gate, at the patio, there,
Yeah.
the courtyard, trying to get in because that's where Google takes them to. And a lot of people would just leave and go on.
Yeah.
How many people have we, we're saying, well, the museum needs to do more. We need to do more
Yeah.
to help people recognize of how to get in there. So I'm glad to hear that. So that part's finished, and
That
when
part
should we see
is
that out?
under construction.
When should we
And,
see that finished?
I'm not sure. We'll check on the status of that. I know that the contractor is
here.
building them as we speak. Yeah, come to the microphone, so.
Mr. Counselor, getting final costs on the products, we had to relocate where do you actually physically put these things? And that went through, we had to deal with DOT, we got our DOT permits in place.
Wonderful.
So it's just close, but not quite there yet.
Matter of getting the product made and delivered and.
They're relatively easy to make, but we actually had to make adjustments based on the size because we have a couple of different prototypes. There's a big one outside my office that the contractor went through, and it was big. And the concern was for wind and some other things, so we had to restructure it downwards. And then Anita was asking for different colors, and we could modify it. So that was fine, we went through that process, so now we're at that final
Mr.
stage.
Morris, how soon will those signs go up?
Probably within 6 months.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay, so that's a little bit of clarity, so I apologize.
okay.
That's clarity that I wanted, so I just wanted to make those statements. Any other statements from council? Yes, Councilor Orpesa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is an important project. and I know, Juanita, you do a great job and for the city, so please don't take this wrong. You know, given the situation that we're in, we have painted a dire picture of where we are with money. And so my take on this is that if we don't have the money available, we may have the money available, but is it to the point where this is more important than some of the other things when we're talking about layoffs and we're talking about furloughs and we're talking about buyouts and those kind of things? And so, you know, I am not prepared to vote on any project that we are going to be spending money on until we can get a clear picture of where we're at as far as this situation is. And so, you know, as much as I think this is important, but I think this is more of a luxury type of service than a necessity, and that's just my opinion. And so, again, I do want to give you credit for doing the things that you do for the city, and I know, you know, that your heart is in the right place as far as the city is concerned. But from my perspective, I am not willing to spend money at this point in time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm going to respond just very quickly, and I don't mean this, and it's going to come out, and I don't want this to come out in an inappropriate, unkind way, but I just have to say this. I want to say to staff, thank you for presenting something to us that will help to generate revenue for not only our city, but also for those local businesses. Keeping people here longer will help our restaurants, will help our gas stations, will help our mom and pop stores, will help Walmart, it'll help everyone. Will help our hotels. Wayfinding will, I think that we're going to find more people utilizing the planetarium, more people utilizing the golf course, more people utilizing Cielo Grande, more people utilizing those public parking areas. I think that this is a mechanism to help to build a greater Roswell. Now, with that being said, I do believe it's a little unfair to consider this as something that is just a want instead of a need. In my opinion, yes, COVID is a much worse year with things, but every year is a crisis year when it comes to producing a multi-million-dollar budget where you have to take from something for something else. And in my opinion, these wayfinding is going to service a lot more people than a softball complex or a baseball complex or, you know, something like that, that we have in the past taken money that could have gone to roads or for other fundings to take care of. Not saying those things are not important. They are, and they do service our community. But this is something that's going to bring a mechanism that could be part of the solution of a game changer in the city of Roswell. Did you have something that you wanted to?
I did. I wanted to say thank you for the comments, Councilor Espesa, and Oropesa. I respect that. But what I'd like to say to the full committee is that I would like you to consider this as just an opportunity to gather the information and to put the RFP out there. Today, I'm not asking for any funding or any money, but just to put it out there to potential bidders to see what that cost could be for the city.
This will still come back to full council for approval. We're not
Yes.
approving the completion of this project. We're saying, what is it going to cost? What would it look like? What would this do for our community?
Correct. Yes. So that's all I'm asking for today, if you would please take that into consideration.
Okay. So there's not a request at this time for funding to be spent. Councilor Foster had raised his hand. Did you have something? If you could come to a microphone.
What funding mechanism are we looking at to pay for this? Is it coming out of lodgers, would come out of lodgers tax? Is that?
I would make a proposal, depending on what it is, that it would come out of either general fund and lodger's tax. For all of the attraction and facilities, I would propose to the council that it comes out of lodger's tax, because it would be a tourism-related initiative, directing visitors to those attractions.
And so from that fund, we don't pay salaries. So when we're talking about layoffs, lodger's tax isn't going to help us with a layoff. It's not something that we can spend for that. So this is something that can help generate other funds that will go into the general fund that can keep us from having to have layoffs. So that is what I was trying to bring out, that it's, with our city, a fund isn't a fund isn't a fund. I mean, I don't agree either that the city is a business, because a business, they can spend their money the way they want to, how it comes in. We have funds that we specifically have to use, and lodger's tax we can't use to pay salary. So it is appropriate for that. Thank you.
Very well appreciated. Great comment. Thank you, Councilor Foster. Councilor Roebuck, real quick. Yes, sir.
Councilor Foster, one minor correction. The businesses get to decide what money they spend except for the taxes. They have to, we don't have a choice. We pay the taxes or they come take us away. So I appreciate this. I think, I understand your frustration about the hiccups with the process, Councilor Perry, about getting the wayfinding done. I think part of the problem has been just the change of leadership, not just the council, but the change of leadership even on staff. And I really think that, as someone who has done sign design, marketing, et cetera, as counselors, we might share our opinions, but I hope that we never are voting on something. We hire our experts. I've got my opinions about our logo. I like it. I think it's a good logo. I might have done it differently, but I'm going to let Juanita do her job. And I think she's done a great job with that. So I think there's a difference between the council getting involved with picking the color or the wood versus that, and as well as more of what I really appreciate about this, and what is that we do need to be involved in is what the staff is bringing us, is this is the strategy, and we need to have a comprehensive strategy, and I love the fact that it bleeds down into all of our assets, whether it's our streets, our wayfinding, et cetera. And unfortunately, it has taken however many years to do this, and we have to make sure that we can help cut down the time because designs and stuff change and age just that quickly. So, when we were talking about this, the current wayfinding signs, I think I had a discussion with Joe. It's like, hey, why are we going to spend this money now? These designs are close to obsolete. But we said, well, let's move that forward and then continue to make course corrections. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate your leadership, Juanita, and the work that you're doing. And I want to reiterate that these aren't expenses as much as they're investments. If we spend money on this, we're expecting a return on it. Just like the money we spend on this building we're in right now, we're looking for a return on these investments. Otherwise, why are we spending the money? So, and that return is not necessarily have to be on every investment the city makes. It's not necessarily a financial return. It could be a return to our citizens. But what is the return on that investment? So, in this case, I think there's a financial aspect to it as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I just address Councilor Foster? I just wanted to, for the record, some salaries are paid out of lodger's tax, just in case someone says, oh, in looking at the budget, we're able to have 40% of our salary out of lodger's tax only for those that administer the tax. So that would be mine and Stephanie Mervine and our visitor center staff. Just.
Mr.
Right.
Chair.
Yes, Councilor Pesa.
Just as a matter of clarification, because the information that we have in front of us does put a $60,000 amount on it, but you're telling me that we're not going to approve a spending amount.
Correct.
So what exactly is it that we're going to be well, let me word it this way. Why is a $60,000 amount on the information that we have?
Because I believe it's going to cost more than $60,000, and the council has to approve any project that's over $60,000. So that's why I put it on there. I don't know officially how much it's going to cost, but I knew that I'm pretty positive it'll be over $60,000. So the only thing that you guys are approving is the scope of work to issue the RFP, and in the RFP, we will ask them for like the cost analysis for whatever they are proposing to the city of Roswell, and that'll be one of their evaluation criterias.
Okay. Well, and when we go to vote, I want the record to indicate that I will be voting, supporting the scope of work, but not the money amount that is attached to it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Duly noted, Councilor Pesa. I think that by a vote, well, by the motion would be to send to full council for the, or does this go to full council for the request of an RFP? It does, doesn't it? For the sending to full council for an RFP to be put forth on this consideration, okay? So that's what that would be. Let me just ask very quickly, would this go on to consent? Okay, so it could go on to consent agenda just for the, to allow for an RFP to be sent forth, okay?
Mr. Chair, I would rather go into full council so the other councilors will also understand that the dollar amount is not being attached to it.
Duly noted. So that's the way we will go. I don't have a problem. Any counselor does have the ability to pull from that, put forward to full council. Okay. All right. Is there any more discussion? All right. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we recommend to full council the scope of services for RFP 20XX wayfinding services. This recommendation does not include any budget or dollar information considerations.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consider scope of services for the district MRA.
Okay, one more. This again is another request for proposal, scope of service. This one is for concept and engineering plans within the railroad district. The New Mexico Main Street issued proposals for grants back in the fall. Our Roswell Main Street team and the city and some of our counselors worked together and received a grant funding for the concept and development plans. You guys were approved with resolution, I believe it was 2017, to do the 20% match for the $100,000 grant that we did receive. So this again would just be to issue the RFP to collect those engineering and design firms that would redevelop this area with the grant funding that we received from New Mexico Main Street. The grant, this is kind of just a little bit of background information. It was awarded on December 2nd. The grant offers the match. We, as a city, already approved that 4-0 at finance. It passed at council. This was the steps for this project. Bill took it and we added it to the ICIP list. We included it as the MRA district expansion, and then we approved the resolution. So then the last and final step would be to develop and send out the RFP for the construction documents for the project. This is the project objective. This is to transform a vacant, undeveloped area in our railroad district. It will be inviting, have pedestrian walkways, connecting to some downtown anchors, and then utilizing a public and private partnership. So this, you can kind of see this is the project area map. And then on the scope of service, that's what you guys would be approving today, would allow contractors to prepare an RFP, and in that RFP, the scope of service outline would be their kickoff community meeting to ensure that our community has a voice in this development project, to look at existing conditions. 30% of the project would be the design submittal. Again, another community meeting to ensure that this community is in support or have had a voice for this project. Then 60% would be the design development. Then the other 90%, and these are the numbers that we got from the New Mexico Main Street on how they would like the evaluation. So when you look at it, it doesn't quite match the 100%. The final construction documents would then be submitted, and that would be the full, complete scope of service of the project. Does that make sense? And that is it for this one.
Any questions or discussion from committee? I would entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion to consider scope of service for RFP-20-00XX issuance for the preparation of a concept plan and engineering plans for within the railroad district, MRA bounded by Walnut Street to 3rd and between the BNSF railroad corridor and Virginia Avenue to consent.
Second.
Okay,
Is that right?
We have a motion and a second for the scope of services for the RFP to be sent to full council on consent. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Let me just make one mention, and the way we're just going to handle this is, I think it's concurrence is fine. The staff has let me know that the fund numbers actually for RMAC, Zoo, and Golf are as follows. RMAC is 2611, Zoo is 2612, and Golf is now 2613. I think I had given you previous. So that's what we have, and that's what will be included in the RFP as the correction, okay? All right, in the resolution, thank you. Did I say RFP?
Yes.
I'm tired. It's been a long day, but I appreciate each and every one of you sticking it out with us and making this work. Thank you, Counselor Stubbs and Counselor Foster, for coming and being a part with that today, and for Ms. Fleming. Also saw Ms. Rita Kane Dorhofer has stayed here with all of us. Did you have for public comments as well? Okay. She has something she would like to share very quickly.
Thank you, Chair. I took off my mask so you could all hear me. I'm Rita Kane Dorhofer. I'm a county resident, very narrow, unstriped Mark Road. When I was growing up in a city that's a little bit bigger than Roswell, all the kids were exposed to the arts. That is very, very important. Culture. I was very fortunate that my parents had a lot of money, so I was exposed to the museum, the symphony, the ballet, the theater, the planetarium, the aquarium. You name it, I had to go. But my favorite was the free zoo, the Lincoln Park Zoo. I spent many hours there, and I think that's important that all the kids go. And the city that I grew up in made sure we did not have middle school. It was elementary school in the 60s, the 50s and the 60s when I was growing up, and they made sure that every kid got to go to the museums, the Art Institute. This is very important for our kids to know something outside of the city of Roswell. I know that we could have budget issues, but now nobody's going to be liking this. Has anybody considered salaries? Does anybody know that the first 9 people on the city salaries makes $1.2 million? 9 people out of, last time I looked, it was 546, and I will get a new salary report tomorrow. But maybe somebody needs to take a look at that too. I mean, that's a lot of money. I know you counselors only make what, $7,000, $1,000 for lower than what you do. You are in charge of making these programs, making everything work. And you get paid very, very little as to what you have to do. But maybe you need to look at the salary structure. Thank you so much.
I want to know one thing. Growing up, did you get to go watch any baseball?
Well, yes, and I got in free because we're not going to go there. Yes, but again, that is educational too.
Yes, ma'am,
it teaches you math. It teaches you how to yell at people. I mean, seriously, please take a really good look at what we do about charging.
Absolutely. And I think that, thank you. No, I appreciate you. Yes. But very, very well taken. And I think that as we work ourselves through this budget process, we've still got a little over a month and a half to really dig into these things and really take a look at it. But, you know, I think that allowing each of these entities to take a really good, hard look at what they have and what other communities are doing and the abilities that they've had, and see what we can't do for all citizens of Roswell and for those who come to believe in Roswell, if you would say. Okay, Councilor Robe, did you say you had something before we leave?
Just real quick, we're certainly, I agree with her. It's so important that our children are exposed to the arts. It's one of the very important reasons we have the museum. I take my kids to the museum, once or twice a year at least, if not more than that. But we're going to, even if as we initiate fees, this is a discussion that we've had in general services, but the city council has a strong value in making sure that all of our citizens, especially our children, whether they can afford it or not, they have access to all of our city services, and we're not going to forget that, and we're going to make sure that they have access and they're able to get there. So, thank you.
All right, if there are no other comments,
I have some comments. Hello. I have a comment.
Hold on just one moment.
I'm on the go-to meeting.
Hold just one moment, please, if you would. How many do we? Okay, we have 3 people that are watching on GoTo, and we do have public comment section time. I apologize for you that are out there on the GoTo meeting. I'm so unused to this, because we're not seeing your face, I don't see, and I don't have a computer monitor sitting in front of me. The one who was just speaking, if you would, please give me just one moment. We try to be fair and amenable to everyone, but I had closed out my clock on my phone here. If you could please state your name and your address, and then you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Go ahead.
My name is Lori Roof. I'm the former director of the Roswell Museum and Art Center, and I live in Chaves County outside of the city. But I've been a city employee for 24 years at the museum, and I have some observations. I attended the budget workshop, and I thought it was very informative. I thought it was very good that Joe Nebb laid out that the 3 entities, museum, zoo, and golf course, are very important for the quality of life of Roswell residents, and that he is not trying to close down these services. However, when I looked at the cost recovery tier designations, the matrix that he provided, I see that the Roswell Museum and Art Center is in tier 4, which is a designation for 70 to 100% recovery rate, and is defined as a specialized service, generally for specific groups and those with a competitive focus. A service that has no direct benefit to the community, whereas tier 1 services are defined as a service that benefits the community as a whole, a service that enhances the quality of life, and has almost no restrictions on participation. So to me, that's a disconnect. It's a disservice to the museum, and it devalues it. The museum is open to the general public, free of charge, 5.5 days a week, is accessible to physically and mentally challenged individuals, provides special accommodations when required, offers programs for children, adults, and seniors, is a quality of life educational venue for all of our community, and through its programs and services provides enrichment in the arts, history, and science. in accord with state curriculum standards. How can the RMAC not be a Tier 1 service? And I also want to echo what Councilors Foster and Oropeza stated, and also Nancy Fleming. I believe that the 70-30% split projected for fiscal year 2022 is severe, and I hope it's not punitive. I really hope that. But in looking at the fiscal year 21, the budget has been going from 1.2 million to 693. That's like a 57% decrease. And although the city says it's subsidizing the museum, certainly it is, and it always has because it's the parent organization. Well, the subsidy of 82% is normal. That's historically normal for this museum in this city.
Lori,
Yes.
Lori, your 3 minutes are up. If you can just sum up in about 10 seconds, I'll give you that to sort of sum up if you could.
Okay, my sum up is that the ending cash recovery at the end of fiscal year 2021 is $7,407, which is not enough to keep the lights on in fiscal year 2022, let alone to pay somebody to flip the switch.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Lori, it is good to hear your voice. I have not seen you in some time, but we do appreciate the significant energy that you have put and passion into the museum, and we do take the comments that your comments do carry heavy weight because you have such wisdom in that area. We do appreciate that, and I'm sure that we'll continue to look at this subject in the future. Thank you. Is there anyone else that is on the go-to that has assumed that they would like? Let me just ask if anyone else is on the go-to that had desired to give public comment. Could you just say yes at this time? Give you just a moment to make sure your microphone is not muted. If you'd unmute your microphone, just say you want to speak if you desire to. Give you one more opportunity. Okay, let the record show that no one else from the go-to meeting desired to speak. What's that? Yes, exactly. Okay, we will let the record reflect that the meeting is now adjourned at 11:54. Everyone have a wonderful day.